Hey everyone, it's Stevie Taylor here. Thanks for tuning in. If you're returning, nice to see you again. Glad you're still enjoying the podcast. If this is your first episode, welcome, and I hope you dig it. Well, we're up to episode 35 already, and to be honest, I didn't think we'd make it past episode 10. It's been a crazy 6 months since I started this thing. I've met and spoken to some incredible people, real people with real stories. It's a trip. And I love it. If you want to get in touch with me, to talk to me about the show, to make suggestions on how I can improve the show, suggest someone as a guest, or if you think you should be on the show, please hit me a DM on Facebook or Instagram at The Gig Life Podcast, or you can email me thegiglifepodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I could also use your help to spread the word of the podcast. Please share it on your social medias. Tell your friends to check it out. It's free. It always has been free, and it always will be free. So again, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy episode number 35 with Simon Fishburn. Cheers. My guest today is Simon Fishburn. Simon is a multi-instrumentalist, performing artist and educator. Originally hailing from Sydney, Australia, and now living in New York, Simon has been playing the drums since he was 10 and professionally for over 20 years. Having majored in music at high school and later graduating from the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, Simon's passion for a diverse array of musical styles soon made him an in-demand drummer at a young age. He's worked with some of Sydney's top event bands, including the Enormous Horns, Gotham City Horns, and Hipnosis, as well as playing and recording for major label artists such as Tania Bowra, Roger Frampton, Anita Spring, and Ben Fields. Having moved to New York in early 2012 to further broaden his musical endeavours, it hasn't taken long for this hard-working, fun and easygoing yet gritty drummer from down under to establish himself in the New York live music scene. There's many layers to Simon Fishburn, and we peel back a few in this conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and please give it up for Simon Fishburn. Cheers. I think we're rolling.
Oh.
Simon Fishburn.
Hey, mate.
Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
What's going on?
Oh, I'm having a great time in Australia.
Yes, you're here for a short time?
2 weeks is a short time.
Yep.
It's still enough time to see family and friends, and a couple of gigs.
Yeah.
And, enjoy the sunshine when it comes out. We've had some pretty bad weather the last couple of weeks here.
Yep.
So, but it goes very quickly. There's so many people here, I lived here for 37 years before I went to the States. So that's a good chunk of your life to leave behind. So everyone wants a bit of you.
And you're in New York, aren't you?
I am.
Yep.
Living in Brooklyn, New York.
Cold?
It's cold.
Right now?
Yep. It's, I don't know what it is. I don't want to look. I'll look when I'm on the plane. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I'm going back to.
Damn, yeah. So you head back Sunday, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
Flight back at 12:30. So.
Cool. And still a couple more gigs. You played your own show last night, didn't you?
I did.
Yep.
I did. It's the first time I put my own show together in Sydney, and
oh, ever?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I've
cool.
always been a side person.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Yep.
So I've played with the likes of Paul Wynn and Craig Calhoun, who I had playing with me last night. And they always like, oh, you're coming to Sydney, great, we'll hook you up with some gigs and stuff. And nothing came about. And I was like, I want to play, so all right, I'll put on my own show, because I've been doing my own shows in New York for the last two and a half years.
Right.
So I can do this. And it was a bit of work. Dad was like, you don't want all that hassle while you're here, just enjoy the family and friends and all that. But there was something inside of me just going, look, it's been 7 years. I've not cashed in on that experience and that value of living in New York. And so here I am, and doing that now and going to the next level in my career.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, about
Cool.
time, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And who else was in your band last night?
Melinda Jackson on vocals.
Right.
So she did a little stint with the Rogue Traders a bunch of years ago.
I only found that out the other day.
Yeah. So
A couple of nights ago.
right. Yeah. So she did that. But before that, we played in wedding bands together. That's how I knew her.
Right.
Actually, she'll tell the story better than me, but as she did last night. But I first met her when she was in year 12 and I was teaching at St. Leo's College in Wahroonga.
Teaching music?
Yeah, that's where we first kind of
Okay.
met, and she saw me, and then we kind of got into a band together after that with Paul Wynn. And we've had, quite a history of away gigs and local gigs and just being silly, and, away gigs are just so much fun. You go to the country and you get to, do the gig, and then you go back to the accommodation and you have a few drinks. And what, as I said last night, what happens on away gigs stays on away gigs. There was some crazy shenanigans we got up to.
Yeah, that's cool.
But just awesome memories. And I used to take a video camera around. I used to be that twat with the...
Oh, you're that guy.
I was that guy.
No.
And at the time, people were like, dude, put that freaking camera away. But now they're all like, hey, let's go and watch those videos again,
Yeah.
So it's like, yep, see, thank you very much. So, this is before like phone cameras were a thing. You had the little hand camera thing, the handheld thing. So. Yeah, so it was great. And Paul reminded me that the incarnation that I had at one stage, because I also had another friend of mine who I'd played with a lot, Guy Vaughan Smith, who's a fantastic bass player, who'd played in these wedding bands with me. He was at the gig and got up and played. And at that stage I had Mel, Paul, Guy, myself, and then Adrian Cunningham. And that's someone that, you might want to chat with. Mm-hmm. So he lives in New York. He's an Australian guy, and I studied with him at the Conservatorium here in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And then he disappeared to New York, and when it came time for me to go to New York, I was like, well, who do I know there that I can contact? So he was the guy that I contacted and really helped me out, getting straight on what visa to get and how to get over there. And he just happened to be in town and was free last night. So he played, and it was that same away gig that we did in the country, and we went back to this house and we played Truth or Dare, and and that's all I'm saying. But I didn't realize, but it was the same band. It was like crazy.
That's cool.
And who else got up? I think that was about it. That was it. Yeah. So it was just so much fun. You can say I'm still smiling now from it. I'm high on that gig. It was just crazy, and really great venue, and the people out there at Street Market Asian Tappers in Crow's Nest are just amazing. So anyone listening that wants to go and see some live music, they're doing a really good thing out there. They're getting a lot of really good acts in, and Craig's played there, and Simone Waddell is going to be playing there next, or maybe a couple of weeks, I think. Nick Jeffries has played there. I've played with Nick, and we went to school together, same school. So they're doing some really good stuff out there.
Awesome. All right, man, let's roll back to the start.
Uh-oh.
Where it all be. Oh, yeah, that's where we go. That's what this is all about. Okay, so you're born in Sydney, am I right?
Yep.
Right. Music in the family?
My parents know. Mum played a little bit of piano, but I got my music gift, she would say, from her father, who used to play the harmonica. And I never got to see him play the harmonica because he was in England. All my relatives are from England. That's why I don't have a really Australian accent, It's not really twangy because my parents are British, you see. So I grew up in Australia, but I was first generation Australian. My sisters were even English.
Right.
They all immigrated, back in 68, and then I was born in 73.
Okay.
5 years later. And so I had, 2 older sisters, 10 and 14 when I was born, and my parents. So I had all of that accent around me. But so my grandfather used to play by ear, and he used to play the harmonica. So I think that was one of the first instruments I ever played, that and the recorder. I don't know which came first. Oh, and the melodica. I used to play this little toy melodica as well, which is the piano that you stick in your mouth.
Right, with the little square mouthpiece thing.
Yeah, exactly, Now you can get them with the tube, And so I do that. But at the time it was just this thing. I'd just run around the house. So they were the first instruments. I think it was the harmonica, the first one, And then Mum put me in piano lessons when I was about 4 or 5 and maybe 6, and I was struggling.
I was going to say, did you dig it?
It was hard. I didn't have a good teacher, bless her. But it was like, Simon, where's middle C? And I'd be like looking at my mum who was sitting over in the back, and mum was like, move your left hand. So I was like, eh, and she'd be like, no. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. Yeah. So that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
But because I then had played the recorder, I think it was a natural progression to go to the clarinet. So my next door neighbour's mum was going to put her son into this concert band, this community concert band, and came to mum and said, look, he's going to play the trumpet. Would Simon like to join the band as well? And so at that point, I'd played the recorder and that was about it. So then, we said, what about the clarinet? There was a bunch of clarinets that were available. So that's where I got started at the age of 7. And it was the Hornsby Concert Band. And I drove past the location where the old hall used to be in Normanhurst on the way here. And it just brought back a lot of memories. That's where I started. And we sat there trying to work out how to put this clarinet together. And that's where I got my first training, is in concert band on the gig, right. In this concert band, not private lessons, but in, with a whole bunch of other musicians. So it was really nerve-wracking and daunting, but managed to sort of get through that. And then when I got to high school, I had formal lessons. So that was that. And then from there, we had a family, friends of the family that lived in Brisbane. I think they were just friends. I think Dad used to work with him. So we would drive up to Brisbane every so often and see these people, and their son played the drums. And I remember this one time seeing this drum kit, and I was blown away. It was like, whoa, what is this? And at the end of that little stay, stayed probably, 2 days or something. At the end of that, he gave me a snare drum. I don't think it was the snare drum from that drum kit, but it was a snare drum on a stand with a little cymbal attached to it, like a little...
Yep, little trap set type thing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and some sticks. And I took that home, stuck it in the basement, and Dad was trying to build this log fire thing in the bottom of the house in the basement. And so he'd built this rock kind of display thing, and it was like raised up about a foot. And so that was, that became my stage.
Yeah.
That was my very first stage.
That's awesome.
At about 8 or 9 or something like that. And I stood there and I would just pretend that I was on stage with, I don't know who it was back then. Probably whoever my sisters were listening to.
Right.
Being 10 and 14 years older than me, and from England, they brought a lot of English stuff like David Bowie and Elton John, Spandau Ballet, The Police, Duran Duran, just like new romantic stuff. And Mum and Dad were listening to, Barbra Streisand and classical music as well, Debussy and all sorts of different stuff like that. And they were my first influences musically. So, and then of course, whatever I started listening to on the radio, which probably wasn't until a couple of years later, but then I started listening to some Aussie rock, Crowded House or whatever was around at that time. And just pretending I was, stuff like turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. And I don't know how good I was or if I was just banging away, I don't know. But I used to pretend I was like on stage with those bands, just playing.
So were you actually aware of the drummers, or were you just hearing the drums?
I don't think so, because I was like more wrapped in the whole thing, the sound of it, and also how bands looked as well. Like I loved what the New Romantics were wearing, and their hair and the whole image. It was like this serious kind of like looks that they'd do in photos and stuff, and that was cool. And then so that was all bubbling away, and I was playing the clarinet, and I was doing pretty well because by this stage I'd been playing the clarinet since I was 7, so 3 or 4 years, and I started doing competitions and doing state competitions and then some national competitions within these concert band circles, and doing pretty well there. And then I started getting private lessons when I went to St Pius, my school in Chatswood. When I was in year 5, I started in year 5 there and went through all the way to year 12. And I started getting private clarinet lessons. So I was in the concert band there. I was also still in the Hornsby Concert Band. And I was sitting there I was going to say something other. I was sitting there, with a bunch of other clarinet players, trying to get through whatever we were playing, and I kept looking over and seeing the drummer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I was going to ask.
So, and I'd had this little drum at home, and I loved playing it, but I also used to grab a tennis racket and pretend I was a guitarist as well. So I don't know if it was, I think it was, I was just attracted to performing.
Yep.
And it didn't matter if it was the drums or the clarinet or a tennis racket, you know.
Yep.
So, you know, but when I saw this guy, his name is Mark Feist. Hi, Mark, if you're listening. Look me up on Facebook. He was just the cool. He was badass. He was just cool. He didn't say much. He had the hair. He had dark glasses. He chewed gum because you couldn't, you know, when you were younger, you couldn't chew gum, but he was chewing gum. What? So he was in year 10. I was in year 5. And somehow he became my first drum teacher. I didn't approach him because I was nervous as hell and quite a nervous Nelly, kind of, you know, like very shy. And so I think my mum or someone must have approached him and said, look, Simon wants to play the drums. Would you give him some lessons? So he became my first drum teacher. He was in year 10 and I was in year 5. So that kind of started that. But man, he was, you know, the epitome of like what I really was imagining in my head to be, like the drums and the cool look and, you know, and everyone loved him and all that. And yeah, many years later, when I got to year 10, I became that guy, you know. He'd left and then I became the number 1 drummer and I used to do all the school musicals and chew the gum and be in stage band and the concert band and and we didn't have a marching band. We had brass band. So yeah, so that was it. And I was still doing all this
the clarinet
stuff on the side and so outside. So by this stage, I'd given up any sports because there was no way I didn't have any time for that because I was doing all this community stuff. So then I started, you know, traveling the world with these bands. So the leader or the band leader of the Hornsby Concert Band, Victor Greaves, he also was the musical director of this thing called the City of Sydney Concert Band. And that was the official band of the city, you know. So when the Queen came, they called upon us to do the marching ceremonies and play in the town hall and all that sort of stuff. And in 1988, we had our bicentenary reenactment where the First Fleet left from Portsmouth again. I don't know if you know about this, but back in 88, they reenacted the coming of the First Fleet so that all these ships left Portsmouth and they did the same route that Captain Cook did and came to Australia a year later. So we were asked to go to Portsmouth and represent Sydney for this whole thing. So we got to march in front of the Queen, all that sort of thing. But Victor was in charge of this other band, the City of Sydney Concert Band, and I was only in the Hornsby Concert Band. But some players crossed over, you know, it was kind of, you know, but it wasn't the same thing. So anyway, Victor came to Mum and said, look, you know, I really need another snare drummer. And I know that Simon can play the drums. I've not really heard him, so would he like to try out? So I tried out and I became the marching snare drummer in the City of Sydney Concert Band. So now I have 2 sets of uniforms, two more, you know, or 2 bands outside of school.
2 separate instruments.
2 separate instruments. Yeah. And then what happened was with the city band, that became my main thing. I started because that was the band that was traveling a lot. So I got to go to Europe. We went to France. We went to England. We went to America, San Francisco, all of these, and Nagoya in Japan, because these are all the sister cities of Sydney. So we got to go there and we were billeted out by all these different families and it was just amazing.
Well, what an experience.
And this is all before I was like out of high school.
Far out. That's cool, man.
And so when we would, and it was a marching band. The Hornsby Concert Band didn't start marching until they became the Golden Kangaroos, because Victor then started bringing back the marching thing to the Kangaroos and then they became this band that was trying to, you know, be like the American marching bands that you see at the football games where they're doing all the crazy moves and all that sort of stuff. The city band, we would just march up and down the street in a parade. We didn't really do all the fancy stuff. Right. We started to, but it was just basically marching like a traditional marching band, you know, from England or whatnot, or a pipe band. So when in the city band, when we would do concerts, sit-down concerts at the town hall or whatnot, I would play the clarinet mainly. And then when we would march, I would play the snare drum. And then eventually I went on to the quad toms, you know, the toms. And then eventually after that, when I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, I became the drum major of that. So that was that progression there. And then I was like, well, I can't really keep doing the community stuff anymore because now I'm taking my music more professionally, and so that's kind of where that sort of faded off. But it was interesting. I had a bunch of people last night came to the gig that were in those bands. Oh, great! So it was like old friends, new friends last night. It was
would have been
amazing.
A trip. Yeah, that would have been cool.
So yeah, that was my journey in you know, up until 17, 18, and then
right. And is that when you started looking at the con? Was it the con, did you say?
Yeah, the conservatorium. Yeah.
Were you starting to think that way?
It was, in high school when I was doing my HSC, that was my saving grace, by the way. Like I flunked at pretty much everything else. I struggled at reading, spelling, math.
Me too, man.
My mother never got me diagnosed. She was like against all of that sort of thing, but I had all the traits of dyslexia.
Okay.
The gift of dyslexia,
Right.
which it is. It's given me, a lot of amazing experiences, Einstein was dyslexic apparently. A lot of famous people have been that way because they're visionaries. They can see things and hear things in their head, but they, might not be able to read it or whatnot. Anyway, so I lost my train of thought. Where were we going with? Oh, the con.
The con.
Yeah. So
you'd flunked your.
Yeah. So I was like flunking all that. The only thing that got me through HSC barely was doing 2-unit music performing. So clarinet and drums at the same time. My performance was 8 pieces, and half of them were on clarinet and half were on drums, and it ranged from, classical clarinet to the Golden Wedding, and I got my drum teacher to play drums. Right, that old song. To me hopping on the drums and playing Cute. That old jazz standard. To a song called Oh My God by The Police. And, just rocking it out. So, I did all of these styles, and that's really my personality too. Like, I love playing different styles of music.
Great.
But when I was doing all of that, yes, of course, you're thinking, what are you going to do in the future? Like, where are you going with this? And the only real thing that was available to us back in the early 90s was the conservatorium. Like, the Institute of Music didn't exist at that stage. I probably would have done something more contemporary because I wasn't really a jazz player. When I first got into the con, I was still swinging the wrong way. I was still emphasizing 1 and 3. Ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding.
Right.
And I don't know how I got in doing that, but anyway, I flipped it somehow and fell in love with jazz. But I didn't get in the first time. The first time I flunked the audition straight out of school. So I was like, okay, well, who are these people in the audition? It was Mike Knock and Judy Bailey and David Jones. He was the head of drumming
Right.
at that time at the con. So I thought, right, I'm going to get lessons with David. So I went off and got lessons with him for a couple of years, even after I, got into the con. But that was kind of my road there. And so I flunked the first time and then got in the second time and stayed there for 2 years and then got out and started playing on the scene. So.
Right. How did you meet Dave Goodman?
Well, Dave went to the con as well.
Yeah, that's what.
So he was either a year below me or 2 years below me.
Oh, right, okay. Yep.
Because I was only there for 2 years. So he had to be there for the year below me. He had to be there below me on that one. And I remember him coming to a couple of my gigs and was in awe of, me playing and all that sort of stuff. And now, I look at him because he's really gone the jazz route. I kind of went back into pop and groove stuff and so now I'm in awe of him and his playing.
Right.
So it's a cool relationship that we have.
Do you know what he's done with his technique with his left hand?
I only just found out about that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I need to talk to him and catch up with him about that.
Well, if you get a chance, catch the episode that we did and it goes right into it.
Oh, okay, cool, because I haven't yet.
This new technique and...
Right.
But,
I can only imagine that because... after playing for so long, traditional grip and then going to match grip. I remember when I joined that City of Sydney concert band, I'd already been playing rock drums for 4 years or something.
Yep.
Match grip. And then to get in these bands, we had the old snare drum on the brace, so on the strap. And so the snare was on an angle and we had to do traditional grip.
Yep.
And that was clunky and it was awkward and I felt like a beginner again,
Yep.
So, I know Dave Weckl changed his grip and a lot of top musicians have through their career have made some huge changes. I can only imagine that would, be quite an ordeal to go through that, but also a discovery too. I'm sure Dave
well, that's how he's taken it. Yeah, but
beautiful.
I'm sure it was a bit scary at first. He's starting to get these pains and
right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but no, he's killing it. Yeah, he's doing
absolutely.
good. Cool. So now straight out of the con.
Yep.
What was the plan?
Well, Judy Bailey was trying to get me to do the Bachelor of Music because it had just come in the year before me. So, who were some of those guys? Michael Quigley before me. Gosh, I can't even remember some of their names, but a lot of those guys were going and doing the 4 year. Oh, was it 4 or 3? I think it was at 4 years, and I was like, and being like not very academic. I don't want to stay in college for another 2 years. I just wanted to get out there,
Yep.
And Judy was trying to get me to do the 2 years. So I'd never got a bachelor degree. Still don't have a bachelor degree to this day. And yeah, I just got out there and I started playing and playing with a bunch of people. Todd Hardy on trumpet, Dave Thieck on sax. We did some gigs, and then I think it was actually the second year of the conservatorium that actually it was Todd that came to me and said, look, there's a band, they're like a funk band. It's like an Incognito, Brand New Heavies, Jamiroquai type band. And they're looking for a trumpet player and a drummer. Do you want to go to this audition? So we went to this thing and that became, I guess, my first professional band after high school, or, it was like the end of the conservatorium and then going into my early 20s. So I was about 18, 19, 20, 21 when I was in this band called Sister Kate. And it was just a bunch of musicians around Sydney, and we would play places like Round Midnight, what was it called? Harbourside Brasserie, Kinsella's was another one. We would play downstairs and Dig would be upstairs. So Terapai would be upstairs, rocking out. And so, in our breaks we'd run up and, oh man, there's Terapai. But yeah, we were playing all those sort of gigs and doing the graveyard shift at like 1 o'clock in the morning and getting home smelling of cigarette smoke because it was still, it wasn't banned back then. It was all, but it was cool. That was rocking. And we'd make maybe like $20.
Oh,
we got paid as well.
Damn.
But back then, I know now it's like, are you kidding me? But back then it was like, wow, we get some money too.
We're professionals.
Yeah. But it was a big band. It was like 8 piece. We had like 3 horns, two singers, keys, bass, guitar, and drums. And whatever that adds up to be, 8, 9. So it was a big band. So we didn't make a lot of money, but oh man, it was fun. And that's where I learned how to funk, how to groove.
Yep.
And my dear friend Franny Ardashir is the keyboard player. And she played with Jeff Duff back in the day, and she was the keyboard / musical director of that band. And I spoke to her the other day about this. I said, you were the one that taught me about how to listen to the bass drum and listen to boom, boom, boom. Now listen to this bit, boom, boom. It's only 1, not 2. And she was like, no, I wasn't your teacher. I was just sharing my passion with you.
Yeah.
She made me aware of that, but she helped me listen to everything a lot more clearer. And this is my second year at the conservatorium. So I was already like getting some better chops happening.
Yep.
And then when it came to like playing Incognito and imitating those guys and Jamiroquai, it was just a natural progression. It's like, oh, here's my rock drumming coming through with a backbeat, and here's the jazz stuff blending. This is my jam. This is it. And it still has been. Like, I still consider myself now a groove player, or as they say in America, a pocket player.
Pocket player,
Yeah.
And how long did that funk band go for?
Good question. Probably about 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And then a couple of things started splitting off. We started doing, because it was not profitable, we started doing smaller gigs and doing some function work or some little parties, but as a smaller band. So we called it Little Sister.
Oh, cool.
And then the singer and the bass player from those 2 bands, Sister Kate and Little Sister, we formed another band off the side of that without Franny, and it was just bass, vocals, myself, and then this new guy. And I still need to ask him, how did you come to play in the band? I don't know how he rocked up because he wasn't in any of these other bands. Al Goodman, who's doing really well on the scene these days, plays with Skunk Hour and played with Cameron Undy and that. And boy, he played his ass off last night. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was like, I want to go back and play some of those old tunes because that was an original band. So in Sister Kate, we started writing original music, but we were basically playing covers of, Jamiroquai and Incognito, Brand New Heavies, that sort of stuff. So we started spinning off this other band called Baseline and writing it all original material, and Al was in that, and Jason Bondi on bass, Sarah McGregor on vocals, and me on drums. And I think we only played 1 gig and it was around midnight, and I recorded it on my DAT machine, and then I had my friend mix and master it, and I've still got that. And then I made a copy of it and I sent it to everyone.
Oh, cool.
So it was nice to sort of preserve all of that.
Yeah.
And I've had those, and I've listened to those songs often over the years. But this is, oh my God, this is like the end of the 90s, right? Yeah, like over 20 years ago now. And so over the years, I've listened to them and just like thought, wow, it was so cool. We'd just go to Jason's place and I'd drag my drums there, and we'd sit there like on a Saturday afternoon and we would just write. We would just be in the moment, we would play, and Sarah would come up with vocals and lyrics, and boom, we had a song. And we recorded it, and then, we'd write the chords out or whatnot, and then we, did that again and again. And I just had so much fun. That was just perfect for me. I got to play the music I wanted to play, and I got to be creative. I didn't have to read music. I can read music, but I didn't have to read music. I much prefer improv and being in the moment and making stuff up, which is what I do with my band a lot, SiFi in New York right now. But back then, yeah, we created, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 songs. And Sarah's gone and recorded, she did a solo album later and recorded some of those songs. But basically the band fell apart, and I've wanted to recreate that all this time unconsciously, and so that's what SiFi has become in New York.
That's cool.
To like come to today.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. Just going back a little bit. You were talking to, you were doing clarinet and drums.
Yeah.
Did you find it easy, because you were learning to read music, playing clarinet?
Yeah.
When you were first jamming away at your snare drum, did you understand the different? Had you seen drum charts at that stage?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all by ear.
Yeah.
And then I went and had lessons with Mark.
Yeah,
that's
right.
when I started reading. Yeah.
So how was that transition from reading notes into just rhythm, and then trying to change it to a different place on the stave where it's not actually a note, it's a drum?
Yeah, it was. I could totally understand it. Like,
yeah,
all that training
right.
was like, it was like, okay, well, that's where the snare drum is, that's where the hi-hat is, and that's where the bass drum is. Great, and it just stays there. It doesn't move up and down.
Which is a pretty cool thing.
It was cool, and it was on sheet music, so it was the same language. It just looked a little different, but I took to it really easily. What I struggled with was when I joined the City of Sydney concert band and started having to do all these drum cadences. For a rock drummer, that was, and traditional grip too. I was, match grip. So for traditional grip, that was challenging, and I felt stupid and like, oh my God, I don't know any rudiments, and like, because I'd been practicing a lot on the clarinet and then just jamming out on the drums. I didn't have that technique or that theory and the rudiments.
Right.
And so
you were learning the written music before you knew how to play the quote unquote rudiment.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember even when I was older, I still didn't even know what a paradiddle was. I remember going to a band camp and saying, look, you better know how to play a paradiddle, because I intellectually knew that was something I should be teaching these kids. And I could play it, but I wasn't very good at it.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God. And that was the wake up call. It's like, dude, you need to like really work on your rudiments. So then I spent a lot of time just going back and brushing up on all those.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah. So classically trained on the clarinet, but just jamming away on the old drums. But they helped each other. Like I became a very rhythmic clarinet player. I could understand rhythm really well.
Right.
And I became a very musical drummer, and that's kind of how I got a lot of work. I didn't play heavy. I wasn't a loud player. I listened. And now in the States, they say, Simon, you're a singer's drummer.
Cool.
And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what that really means, but thank you. I mean, I do know what it means. That's all they can really say. It's like you really understand how to play the drums with a singer. You understand the frequencies, and don't go to the right cymbal if it's a female in that frequency. So I'm sensitive to a lot of that stuff because I'm musically trained. I'm not just. It's not just like
trained as a drummer.
I'm going to go to a ride cymbal instead of the hi-hat because it rings more.
Because it's a chorus.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's done me very well in that regard. So I get a lot of work for. In cabaret music in New York and playing with a lot of singers, jazz singers and stuff.
So before we get on the plane and fly to New York, what is there anything you want to tell about up to the point where you left to go to New York? So we've sort of
Boy,
we're in
there's
your
a whole other life there.
yeah.
Well, musically, I started getting very heavily into education. So that's a big thing for me, is like
Teaching.
Teaching.
Yep.
And I still do it in some teaching, but I'm focusing on my performing in New York, but but it's been a big part of like who I am, and I've loved sharing the knowledge that I have, and seeing other people go, oh, I get it now. That's magic to me. So I got heavily into teaching. So as soon as I left school, my first teaching job was back at St. Pius. My head of music, Jerry Plummer, gave me my first teaching job on clarinet. So I had 4 beginner clarinet students, and I sat in that room and I taught them. And then Dave Egan, who was my drum teacher, ended up leaving to go, I think he went somewhere else. And he approached me, and Jerry approached me and said, look, would you like to take over from Dave? Because they already had Dave, and they also had another guy called Des Egan, who was teaching there at the time. So after a couple of years of teaching clarinet, I started teaching drums. So yeah, that's kind of, and it was money. I was making money. I could buy a suit. I could, like buy a car with this, and it was great.
Yep.
So I got heavily into that, and then I was doing that all the way up until I left for New York. And the last bunch of teaching that I was doing was some some preschools or primary schools around the Lane Cove area and Chatswood and stuff. But I was at Big Music in Crow's Nest. I lived across the road as they were building that place. And I went across there and I met all the guys and got a gig there and I was teaching like 30, 35, 40 students a week, and then doing band stuff. And that's actually how I met Craig, through Big Music. I was doing band coaching.
Right.
Started doing that. So, through the term I was doing all this private teaching. And then in the holidays I would do band, what do they call it? Rock school or something. School of Rock.
School of Rock, yeah.
And so I didn't get a break. I'd just go all the way through because I loved it, but I would burn out. But so I was teaching, little kids in bands and then adult bands as well. And one of the adult bands that I was teaching, the guitarist in that had a good friend who was this guy called Craig Calhoun, and that's how we met. And then Craig was like, man, because I was playing drums in that band. I was coaching them, but I played drums in it. There was a singer and guitar and blah, blah.
Yep.
And Craig came along and was like, dude, like, where have you been? Who are you? And I'm like, I'm Simon Fishburn. And he was like, well, we need to okay, that's the past. So we need to hang out more. And I'm like, well, I've got 3 months before I head to New York. And he's like, what? So that's kind of where I met Craig. And, anyway, that's that journey. But the other thing that I did apart from teaching, I played in wedding bands. So I was big in the corporate scene as well.
Okay.
Again, it was just good money,
Were you in on the agencies? Like on the agency rosters, or were you in bands that just...
We had agencies.
Independent band. Okay,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Yep.
But I was a side person, so I don't know how they got the work. We just got the call. We've got a wedding in a month's time, and turn up at this time.
Same band.
Same band.
Same, okay, yeah. I was
Yeah.
asking, like, there's those wedding agencies where your name's on that list, and okay, we need a band that day, and they call up Simon and John and Jack, and you get together. Hi, and then you play these songs that they've given you.
Right.
To learn. It's not that.
No, that was before a lot of that started happening.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a band.
Yeah. Cool.
The Baker Boys, right?
Baker Boys, that's the one. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name.
I was racking my head about that too.
Yep.
They're now in New York, and they do a similar thing there too.
Right.
But that was before that session sort of thing happened. I was in a band called Hipnosis, spelled HIP, not HYP, as in like watch my eyes and you will fall asleep.
Yeah.
But and that was with Paul Wynn, so he ran that band,
right.
and then that's how I met Melinda Jackson,
right?
Steve Crane, and a whole bunch of other musicians playing in those bands, and even Adrian Cunningham, Craig Driscoll, who's a sax player in Sydney, and so I was doing a whole bunch of that stuff and not really doing the original band scene, but Paul was doing some original stuff, and he asked me to be in his band, and then we formed the Paul Wynn Band. And then we recorded an album. He was recording his solo album, and then we recorded, our first album where we co-wrote. I wrote some songs, he wrote some songs, we co-wrote some songs, and we made a 11, 12-track album called Nothing's New. And we recorded that at 301, and then we ended up mixing and mastering it ourselves with another guy called Johan, and he was the bass player at the time. And we had a lot of good times doing that and playing around Sydney. But that was the only original thing I was doing.
Right.
And we went to Melbourne once for some band festival, and the guys down there were like, "What's the Sydney scene like?" And Paul and I looked at each other and we were like, we don't really know, because we're in the wedding band circle.
Right.
So that was my life, teaching wedding bands and wanting to be in an original band, or wanting that original band to take off. So when it came to like leaving for New York, that was like, oh, well, here's an opportunity for me to restart my life and press restart and do that what I wanted to do, which was playing more original bands. So I was doing a lot of that stuff for 10, 15 odd years before I left.
Yep.
But the other thing that I did that a lot of people may or may not know about is I did a lot of personal development stuff on myself. Mm-hmm. I knew very early in my life that I wasn't attracted to women, but I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, and that was wrong. And it would wear off, it would disappear. So I, dated women, and it was kind of working, but not working, and it was all just going all pear-shaped.
Sorry, pardon my naivety, but is that what they told you, that it would wear off?
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yeah, back in Christian boys' schools, they would say,
Fuck.
all boys go through this, where you're intrigued about, other guys, and it'll
wear off.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me, dude.
Yeah.
Pardon me, I hadn't heard that before, sorry.
Oh, so we can swear on this?
Oh, fucking hell, you can.
I've been very polite.
No, you are being polite.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was something that I just kept hanging on to, and there was also a part of me that wanted to please my parents as well. And because I'm pretty straight acting, I got away with it. And playing the drums, I was cool, So I hid my sexuality.
They didn't think there was gay drummers?
I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't know there was,
Right.
It to me, it was always a masculine thing,
Right.
So anyone that looked masculine or acted masculine was straight. Anyone that was,
right,
like a fairy, pansy or whatnot, they were gay. And I didn't fit that. So I was like, wait, I fit over here, but I also fit over there. And so I was very confused. I didn't know what to do. I didn't actually come out until I was in my early to mid 20s, mm-hmm. after a number of girlfriends and that.
And it didn't wear off.
And it didn't wear off. It didn't go away. Yeah, as much as I tried to, do conversion therapy on myself.
Far out, man.
Yeah. So, I was struggling, obviously, and I wasn't depressed or anything, but I was very much confused. Yeah. So at the time, I went and saw, I was seeing a naturopath, because I had sinus issues when I was a kid too, some health issues. And so I saw her, and she was training to become a hypnotherapist, and she said, "Simon, do you want to do some hypnosis? I'm doing this stuff." And I was like, "I don't know about that." And she was like, No, it's like guided meditation. Yeah. It's fun. And I used to have a couple of sessions with her, and she helped me, come to terms with who I was, and that it was okay. And she is of the LGBT community as well.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
I guess I did know at the time.
At the time,
yep.
My gaydar was just totally off, and it still is to some degree. I go, that guy, no, he's not gay. Okay. And so, she helped me with that. And then I also started seeing her friend, who was a counselor, and she had studied with or done some courses with Anthony Robbins. So towards the end of the 90s, I started getting into Anthony Robbins. I bought the tape set, and I started listening to this guy, and I was like, wow, this is really cool shit, At the time, I'd also been going and doing courses with Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra. I was more the spiritual thing,
yep.
doing that sort of route. But I started getting into Tony Robbins and hearing what he had to say, and it was just phenomenal. And then I just started doing a lot of his courses. And then I got to a point where I was going back and this is all on the side of me doing weddings and all this music stuff, right?
Yep.
So I had this other life. And I'd go back and I'd go to these courses and do them for free, but I would be crew. So I would, do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and run around and get people water and all that. But we got to be in that environment, and that was amazing. And we also got coaching from the head coaches as well, and our own little thing going on. And it was a cool little scene.
Yep.
And it was so much fun, and you'd learn so much about yourself, and you're always improving. And I was just like, wow, this is really cool. And then it got to a point where my coach above me was saying, well, Simon, why don't you do this more often, like full time or professionally? I think you'd be really good because you're really good with people. And I said, well, I can't. I'm a musician and I've got this whole life over here. And he said, well, why can't you do both? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I can. So what happened was, with all the music teaching and the gigs that I was doing, I was also studying neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. And I was like, wow, this is the stuff that my naturopath was doing with me all those years ago. And it kind of came full circle, and it really completed me. It was helping me with my sexuality. It made me, I guess, a more fun person on the bandstand and off the stage too. And so it was like really working. So I did both of these things. And then I became qualified in these. And then I had my own life coaching company called Awaken Awareness. And I would do little courses and run little workshops and train people in NLP. And I loved it because it's all about the brain and how the brain works. And being, I guess, dyslexic. There we go.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
No, it just came out like that, but I ran.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah. So being like that, I loved all of that conceptual stuff and how the brain worked. And when you think something, then you're going to behave like that. And I also got to help people. I consider myself a people helper. And then what I found was then when I was going into bands, and even now in New York, whenever I get into a band, I elevate the consciousness of it. Not on purpose, but I just, if like there's conflict or if there's something that's adrift or something, somehow I manage to, support bringing those things into alignment and shifting the band up. So taking us from, guys that get on stage in shorts to a full-on professional band that is recording and releasing stuff, So I love taking startup bands and growing them, And
well, that's cool, man.
Yeah, it's great for, where I'm at because there's, so many of those sort of things happening in New York. So so that was my life too. But then when I went to New York, I had to let go of all of that. I had to let go of my business and all of that.
Well, let's talk about how the decision came or what happened to make you decide that you go to New York.
Mm-hmm. So I was teaching at Big Music, as I said before, in Crow's Nest, and in walks this guitarist, singer, and starts teaching there. His name was Ben. He's known by Ben Fields now, but his real name's Ben Fieldstein, and that's how I knew him. And he had an original band, and it was like, an original band, and so I went and checked his band out and listened to them online. He had a single out. And then his drummer moved to Byron Bay, and he asked me, would I like to join the band? And I was like, yeah, this is like my dream.
Original,
of like,
I want original music.
Yeah, I want to be like that rock star still. That's still the dream.
Yep.
But I was helping other people. Yep. I'd got into teaching and life coaching or, even therapy, like helping people, which was great, but I wasn't helping myself. I mean, it was helping me, but I wasn't living my dream. I put all that on hold. So when Ben came along, I jumped at it, and we played around town and in his band, and he warned me up front. He said, "Listen, when you join this band, I just want you to know that I'm working on moving back to America," because he was an American. He came out when he was 15. His parents got work over here, so he'd lived 15 years in America, and then he'd been in Australia for 15 years. So he was quite a unique character. Excuse me, but he wrote some amazing songs, and it was so much fun. And someone else who was in that band was Nick Southcott, who's a great keyboard player that I studied at the conservatorium with. And I think he just happened to be in the band. That was like a coincidence. So it all seemed perfect. And I played with him for about a year, and then he gave me the call and said, my girlfriend has got a transfer. We're heading back to the States because he has a green card because he's American. Right. He was born there and then moved to Australia. So he could just walk into the States. And he said then, well, do you want to, come with to the whole band? And everyone was like, no, we've got partners and, got a life here. And I was like, no, mate. I've got my life coaching business. It's starting to grow. It's starting to kick in. I'd done it for like maybe 5 or 6 years. So it was starting to like reap some good benefits, some results. And I have all this teaching. I can't just like let go of this at the age of 37 and just go and live my dream. And then I started attracting clients in my therapy sessions that were, I'm coming to a crossroads in my career and I'm like, uh-oh.
Let's talk.
Let's talk, and it's so funny because, anyone that knows anything about, the personal development world or psychology knows that we only attract, anything in our external world that I'm looking around your room, even you, I've attracted you in my life because you're a reflection of me. I wouldn't see you if I wasn't already aligned with you and you just want to see it. It's a weird concept, but and so I can now say I created this just as much as you created this. This whole interaction that we're having right now.
Yep.
So I was really challenged going, fuck, what sort of life coach am I going to be if I don't do what I'm supporting these people with? And so that was it. I was like, okay. And everyone was telling me, look, Simon, you can always come back. You can always do teaching. You can always join a band here. Like so many people loved me and I had so much support here. It was the combination of that and knowing that I just had to do this. And go and live my dream so that I could become a better life coach if I want to go back to that at some point in the future. And so I said to Ben, okay, let's do it. And then it was like, okay, now how do I do it? How do I actually get to the States? Because I'd already been to New York a couple of times and I'd already gone there for 3 months because you can be there for 90 days, And I was there in 2001, just before the towers went down. That whole year doing a lot of Anthony Robbins stuff. And I had 3 months in between a couple of courses. One was in Miami and one was in Colorado. So I had 3 months. I was like, I'm going to go and live in New York. I'm not going to come back to Sydney. I'm going to go and live in New York and I'll study a bit of acting and take a guitar. And because I started teaching myself guitar at the age of 26, 27. That was something that happened through this life-changing personal development stuff that I was doing. Was I started opening up to the tennis racket thing that I wanted to do as a kid. It's like, go and buy that. And it was also go and buy a surfboard, or it's a boogie board, but, bodyboard. Go and take karate. You've always wanted to do karate. Go and buy it was all this stuff that started happening in my quarter life crisis. So yeah, that's, okay, I went down that path and now
it's all right.
Bring me back, Stevie.
Well, I was just fascinated with that path you went down then, so I can't remember where we came from.
I know, it's interesting, isn't it? So,
Yes.
I had that life coaching.
Oh, yeah, so
you
you the 90 days.
Oh, yes, the 90 days where I was in New York.
Yep.
And so I lived there and I was the singer-songwriter and, I wasn't a drummer then. I gave up playing the drums for a moment there and I was the singer-songwriter and I thought that's going to be the ticket for me. And I was already writing a lot of stuff as well on the guitar and singing a bit and getting some singing lessons from Marion Ruvus, who's Diana Ruvus' mother.
Yeah.
Her.
Yep.
And this was when Diana was like, I don't know, 16, 17 and would come in and demonstrate her mother's techniques. And I'd be like, oh, you can sing.
What a cool human she is. She's awesome.
Yeah. So that's how I got singing lessons with her through Diana. But, And so I was, I'd had this new identity. I was the singer-songwriter and this is going to fulfill me, which it didn't. I mean, it does and it still does because I do sing and play guitar and I write music and I do children's music now with a lot of this stuff. But drumming is just, it's my number one calling and I go crazy if I don't bang the skins, you'd know about that. So, yeah, that 3 months in New York, I tried to live there and thought, this is going to be my ticket. I'm going to try and stay there. And I had no idea. I was so naive. I just thought I'd be able to just stay there. I mean, I knew I had to catch a plane out of there 6 days before the towers came down. I was in Hawaii doing another Anthony Robbins course when the towers came down, which was really insane. But then I came back to Sydney and I tried to recreate New York and I lived in Darlinghurst and it was not the same. I mean, it was great, but it just was not the same. And So I'd always had that affinity and that love for New York, and growing up on Sesame Street and the Muppets and, that whole thing and a lot of American sitcoms and stuff. And,
walking down the street and every house has a whole bunch of steps up to the...
Yeah,
gotcha.
The stoops, on those brownstones.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I went to New York that first time, it was in 97, I went for the JVC Jazz Festival and saw Jeff Tain Watts and Elvin Jones and...
Oh, wow.
Just a whole bunch of musicians. Oh, my God, it was insane. I was there for 4 days and that was my first, New York experience, and then I got the heck out of there. So that was my first taste, and I remember touching down going, ooh, I'm home, catching myself saying, ooh, I'm home. That was weird, and I still think that's weird, but maybe a past life thing or something. But that was my first taste, and then I already had, by the time Ben said, let's go to New York, I'd already had that, New York, but at 37, I wasn't about to, drop everything and become a 21-year-old in a rock band again. Mm-hmm. But I had the support of my parents and family, and they said, look, just do it for a year or you can always come back. You'll kick yourself if you don't do it.
That's right.
And it was one of the best things I ever did. Yeah. So, but it took me about 8 or 9 months. So I rang up Adrian Cunningham. Dude, how are you living in New York? He's like, I gotcha. Get in contact with this lawyer. He's my lawyer. You need to go for the O1 visa.
I've got a note there. I was going to ask you about that because first time I'd ever heard of that was when you contacted me and said that you're on the O1 visa, and I'm like, what's the O1 visa? I'm going to ask him about the O1 visa. Yeah. The
O1 visa. It's the extraordinary ability visa.
Right.
So Adrian said, it's the extraordinary ability visa. I'm like, what? Yeah, you got to prove yourself of extraordinary ability to go to the States. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I hadn't really played. I hadn't met Craig. I wasn't playing at that level. I was still doing weddings and stuff. No one knew me. I don't have any endorsements. And how am I going to do that? He's like, don't worry. I'm sure you've got memorabilia and posters of things and photos and a couple of articles online and CDs that you've recorded. I'm like, yeah, I got a couple of those. Start putting it together in a portfolio. Start going through your whole music life and just start, recording it visually on a spreadsheet or whatnot. So I got in contact with a lawyer and started doing this process. And lo and behold, I think it was about 9 months later, I got the visa come through. And I moved in January of 2012. But through all of that process, Ben had already been there for about 8 or 9 months.
Right.
He just, they went, Yep. They said, we're going, well, catch us up kind of thing. So in that time, Ben had realized that New York is not a band town necessarily. It can be, and I'm in bands there, but it's tougher. It's a session musician town. Mm-hmm. It's not like some little quiet town where you're in one band and you go and rehearse on the weekends or every week. You're a hired gun over there, and you get called up and you get paid to do stuff, and you're not really in the band. You're just doing contract work. So he went through this whole process and went through a bit of a depression around it because he really wanted to have a band, but his big goal was to get signed, and he wanted to get signed with Warner Music, and so he did that.
Specifically Warner Music?
Well, he had a contact through that, and being of Jewish heritage as well, he connected with the head of the music department, the record label, and just stormed through and just basically said, here I am, and they signed him up under one of their smaller labels for a year, and they helped kind of produce the record, and I couldn't even get on there and play a shaker. Or anything. He wanted me to get on there and play something, but I couldn't. And so that kind of fell apart. And so he was like, look, man, you're going to have to come over here and do some other stuff because it's not going to happen that way anymore. And I was like, look, I'm already well and truly into the process. And he said, look, I'll still sponsor you to come here, but, things have changed. So through that 8 months, I was like, okay, well now the goalpost has changed. I'm not going to be playing in Ben's band anymore. I'm going to have to, find other work. So that's when I started reaching out to people like Sean Wayland and Neville LeGreen is a bass player over there who's an Australian expat. He's been there for a number of years, and he really looked after me. He gave me some kids to teach when I first got over there as well. But he introduced me to Richie Kanada's jam session. Richie Kanada's the old sax player from Billy Joel's band. Mm-hmm. And he has a jam at the bitter end on every Monday night and has killer musicians.
Right.
And I remember going with Ben when I got to New York to these jam sessions and just being totally intimidated. They were like mean looking, like criminal, like guys that played the shit out of the instruments. And I'm like, one of these days I'm probably going to end up playing with them. Oh my God. It took me about three visits to actually sign up in the jam session.
Yep.
And then that's when I started getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
But Ben was still a good friend of mine. I went and stayed with him when I first got there, but he was still like, look, you can come and stay with me for a bit, but you've got to do your own thing, The funny thing was I got known as the drummer that lived in the tent. So when I got to New York, Ben had already been there for, a bunch of months, right? And he took his dog with him that he had here. So him and his girlfriend needed this apartment that had a balcony in Williamsburg. Excuse me. And so the 7th floor of an old confectionery factory was converted into apartments, and they had this 1-bedroom apartment with a huge balcony where the dog could run around and poop and all that stuff. But they set this tent up. It's like a white marquee tent. And apparently before I got there, his parents had stayed in it, some friends, like people would come and stay on this blow-up mattress with heaters because it was the winter. I got there in January. It's the middle of the winter.
Yeah, crikey.
2 heaters in this tent. And the first morning I woke up, it was billowing like a I don't know, it was like a squeeze box, right? It was like, vroom, and I could hear the traffic on the Williamsburg Bridge and the sun was bright. And I'm like, what is this about? It was crazy because the pictures were like really cool. He decked it out with a little lamp and some other cool stuff, a painting in this tent and all this sort of stuff. It looked like the Ritz in these photos, but really it was just a blow-up tent with a bunch of shit in it, really. And it was tied down to this balcony. And I was like, it was so funny. It was just so random. I was posting on Facebook, and Sean Whalen, I think is he traveling here at the moment? He comes back to Australia. He's an Australian keyboard player, if you're not familiar with him, who lives in New York. And he saw my post and was like, what? So he started posting online saying, this dude, Simon Fishburn's just come from Australia and he's living in a tent. Does anyone have any accommodation for him? So that's how I got out of the tent. I lived in that tent for a week and a half. And it snowed and it had icicles on it. And one night I actually crept into the house and slept in the house. And Ben went ballistic. He's like, no, get back in the tent. I'm like, okay.
Oh, shit. Some slave shit.
Yeah, it was a bit. Sorry, Ben, for telling that, but it was pretty funny. So that was, and then I got known as, you're the drummer that lived in the tent. So that was a good start to my New York experience.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and Ben and I are still friends. He's got a couple of kids. He now lives in Nashville and doing, more of he left Warner and went more of an Americana route because he was playing here in Sydney with a bunch of jazz musicians. So it was like funky and groovy. But when he went to the States, he really wanted to go back to that Americana, like boom, 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 boom. And I was like boom, I was like doing all that shit. And so it wasn't really a fit in the first place. We liked each other and we're good friends, so that's kind of what held us together all that time. But musically, it wasn't the best fit, and for where he wanted to go. But we still keep in contact, and I haven't visited him in Nashville, but he's down there with his studio and his kids and his wife, and doing what he loves. And I'm doing stuff in New York.
Great. When did the SiFi band start up?
Ooh, the SiFi band started. This incarnation of it started about 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Or no, 3 years ago now. It was like March. Yeah. 3 years ago I was visiting Australia and then I came back and I started my band in New York. But I tried to start it in Sydney many, many years ago. I'd created this concept called The Couch or Couch. I called it Couch. And I had this folder and I had all these songs that I wanted to play and the type of players that I wanted to play with and the type of gigs that I wanted to play, which was like going to like rich people's houses and playing parties by the pool, just playing funky shit.
Yep. With
cool musicians like Phil Stack, right? I studied with Phil Stack, Thirsty Merc bass player, and James Morrison, right? And we had him, Todd Hardy, and a couple of other guys. We had this band called what was it called? Moment's Notice, and we would play those sort of parties, and we wouldn't rehearse. We would just get in there, and we all spoke the same language, so we'd say, okay, what are we going to play? Watermelon Man, just those standard funk pocket tunes. And I loved that stuff. I loved that, and I loved just playing in the moment and making shit up. And then the next gig would be totally different, and that was cool too, So I'd always wanted to recreate something like that, and then I started calling my thing couch, and the concept of that was I wanted to invite people on my couch and we'd just play some music, and if you want to leave the couch you can go away and someone else will come and sit on the couch.
Cool.
So that was the kind of concept.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of what SiFi is, or was, until probably about a year and a half ago, when I realized that I just want to keep playing with these good musicians.
Cats,
yeah, because I'm a band guy. I grew up on the North Shore of Sydney in bands and not as a session drummer. So that's kind of, that. So, but we've got a nice blend. We do improv stuff, but we're forming more of a band now. But when I did move to New York, I was with Neville Green and a couple of other musicians in New York. And I called it SiFi and the City Sleuth. And it was couch incarnated in New York. And we did one gig. It was a charity thing. And it was cool. We got to play all those funk jazz standard stuff, but something wasn't quite right, and then I started going, what is it, and then I was working with another band where I had the trigger pads, I was triggering samples and stuff, and started getting into that, and then I realized that I could buy samples of like electro pop stuff and trigger these things, dun, 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 like keyboard parts and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, what if I could just like trigger that shit and maybe get a bass player and a singer and keep it as a small band, but like play around just triggering stuff and jamming on it.
Yep.
So that's when I reached out to a couple of musicians that I'd played with in some bands in New York and said, I've got this concept of like, I'm going to trigger these samples and we're just going to jam over them. So it's like a funk jam band thing. And so for a number of years, that's what we did. And I just kept getting all these different samples, and we'd get together maybe once before a show. I didn't want to over-rehearse because I didn't want to form songs. I just wanted to be in the moment and create these vibes. But it wasn't really elevating. It was kind of like, it was cool, and we would go places, and it was, the soloist would take it out there and we bring it back down, we break it down. But then we needed to like form more choruses. Like the singers were just standing there going, ooh, la, 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 don't know what I'm singing.
Sample number one.
Sample number one.
Sample number four.
Right.
La, la, la. Yeah, gotcha.
So then at the time, the guitarist that I was using and now my producer said, look, I'll produce this stuff, but I reckon we should take that sample and make a song. I think that sample and that sample will go really well together. We'll write a chorus and a verse, bridge, and a form. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I want to just kind of keep in the moment and just have this kind of thing that, we just do in the moment. I don't want to have like formulated songs that we're going to rehearse, and that's too much, But it's not. And now it's like really where I want to be going is like creating a band and forming songs and having the success that we're starting to have now with the band, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about that then.
Okay. So I released the first single, Calling Out Your Name, in November of last year, 2018. And, I self-promoted it. I put it on TuneCore and released it on Spotify and iTunes and everything, Pandora.
Is it on YouTube?
And it's on YouTube, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's on there as well.
Keep talking.
I didn't have any way. I mean, I was just doing a bit of research myself on how to promote a song, and the band wasn't a band then; they were just hired guns. So it was just me. So I was like trying to do all this stuff myself, working out how to get this song out there, and then I found this website that escapes me right now. And
I'll skip. Don't worry about the ads.
The ad. I'm getting some money for that. I don't know. That's it. And we, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, that's right. I was trying to promote it myself and on Facebook and all that, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I was, just lost. And the song isn't, I don't know how many hits that's got or how many plays. I mean, it's got maybe a couple of thousand on Spotify and that. And it was just really in my circles. I wasn't reaching anywhere. And I'm like, it's okay. It's our first song. I'm learning. And I was trying to get like a blog to do something with it or get on a Spotify playlist. And that's the new thing.
That's the new thing. You got to get on those influencers playlists.
That's right.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
You've just got to, it's just got to be there and someone's got to hear it that day. There's not much else you can do, really, eh?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, there's people in the middle that can help you, get to those people. But, it does take a little bit of time to nurture those relationships and get to those influencers.
I'll link, like any links that you've got to that stuff, I'll put in the show notes of this.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you. So, it was about, okay, well, it's the first song and we'd only recorded 2 songs. I wasn't recording an EP or I wasn't doing an album. I'd heard that singles are the way to go these days. So record a song and put it out there and then, have another one back, to back it up and then keep recording and keep, putting content out. So that's kind of the route that I'm going in. And, so, I mean, in my circles were my drum students and their parents. So once I released it, I messaged all my drum students' parents about this song. And one of them is an editor on a TV show called Tales of the City. And she's worked on stuff like the Get Down, which was a Baz Luhrmann TV show that he did about the Bronx in New York. She's worked on a movie called Monsoon Wedding, which was a great movie that was out a bunch of years ago. And she was the music editor and the editor on that. So she started using my song. I didn't know this. She actually, for like one of the scenes that she was editing, she put my song in there. And I came out of one of my children's classes and I got this text message, Simon, I've been using your song for one of the episodes of Tales of the City. She'd already told me that she was working on this show, but I hadn't really thought much about it. I hadn't linked that I could, sync music through some of these parents that I'm, teaching their kids. And I got this, this text message and, I've been sitting on it she said, I've been sitting on it for a whole month because I wanted to make sure that everybody in the production team was on board, including the producers and the directors and stuff. And I'm happy to say that we're going to keep the song in the actual show.
Oh, fantastic.
And so the music supervisor from NBC Universal will be reaching out to you and the show's going to be it's an NBC production for Netflix. And I'm like, NBC? Wow, wasn't that the same studio that Jerry and George Seinfeld went to? And so that was kind of funny. And Netflix, of course, I watch Netflix all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, this is insane. So yeah, I mean, watch those, hopefully in about 3 or 4 months, watch those numbers spike because it's going to be on episode 9 of Tales of the City, which is, I think it's due out. They don't have a specific date yet, but it's going to be released in the spring, summertime in New York. So that's the fall or like late fall, winter here. So around May, June maybe.
Great, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep. And the second song, what's it called? Don't Let Me Go or Don't Let Go. Don't Let Go is going to be coming out through a distribution deal with Rope-A-Dope Records, which is a little boutique label over in the States that Snarky Puppy and Christian McBride and Nate Smith have all released stuff with, even Charlie Hunter, a whole bunch of other musicians as well. My keyboard player, Adam Ahuja, I'll say that name again, Adam Ahuja, I just love saying his name, Ahuja, has his own little record.
Lucky we checked that level because that was
Ahuja.
I told you.
So he has his own record label called Infinity Gritty, and he's partnered with Rope-A-Dope Records, and they're creating this community of like-minded kind of funk, jazz, funk, electro music bands and artists. And he plays in my band, and he's like, let's release the next song through Rope-A-Dope. So that's going to happen on the 15th of March, 15 days' time, because today's the 1st. So in 15 days' time, we're releasing through Rope-A-Dope Records, and that's the second song. So it's like, wow, it's like all of a sudden things are starting to pop.
Great, man.
After 7 years of being in New York. And they say, if you can stick through the first 7 years of any business, you'll start to reap the benefits and the results. And that's starting to really happen now.
So this episode will come out in about 2 weeks. But if you're listening to this now, it's actually now.
Yeah.
So just think about that for a second. So Simon's new song's out now.
Yeah. Go and check it out. We have a Spotify channel and YouTube channel.
Yep.
I got to get happening with I want to get a remix for the song, the first song, and see if I can hit the clubs with that, do the whole Seal thing. Seal kind of broke out through the club circuit. And I think, my band is it's a dance, funk, electro pop outfit, and it's a combination of my rock and my funk and my wedding band, 4 on the floor, boom, boom, boom. I mean, not every song's 4 on the floor.
Gotcha.
This next song is not a 4 on the floor. But it's that kind of groove stuff. And so that's the scene with SiFi.
That's really exciting, man.
Yeah.
And things are starting to happen.
We've written a couple of new tunes. And so the writing partnership with my singer Olivia Harris and Misha Savage, my producer / guitarist, is working really well. And the other guys in the band, Lavondo Thomas on bass and Adam Ahuja on keys, we're all going to get together more and create stuff as a band and move forward, because they're going, oh, shit, it's getting on radio and TV, I should say, with this Netflix thing. And
we got something here.
We got something here. So that's all come together, so
Awesome.
it's all moving in that direction.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were telling me before we went on air that something about Drum Scene magazine.
Yeah, Drum Scene. It was that was a magazine that I loved reading back here in Sydney, and I hadn't seen the magazine in America. It doesn't come out in America. And when I rang or got in contact with Dave Goodman to say, hey, listen, I want to get some press around me coming back to Australia and doing this gig that I'm putting on, he said to reach out to Stevie Taylor, that's you, and also get in contact with Frank Corniola, who's run that magazine for 25 years. And I remember seeing Frank doing a drum clinic at Taramara Music 40 odd years ago. Something, no, I was 5. That's not right. 30 odd years ago, like when I was a kid, my dad took me to this clinic, and Frank was the drummer that was doing this clinic with Sonor. And so I had that in with Frank, and so I emailed Frank and said, listen, I'd love to, get some press in the magazine. And I remember coming and seeing you when I was 10 or 12 or whatever. And he was like, oh, I remember that. Yeah. So we hit it off, and he said, man, I'd be happy to help you out with some press. And so, we're doing an interview as we speak, and that's going to come out in the second quarter. So when this interview comes out, January, February, March, it'll be the April, May, June edition of Drum Scene. So look out for a little interview there with yours truly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
Tell us a little bit about Mr. Simon.
Mr. Simon. Okay, I need to have some more water before I do that.
Sure.
So talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Yeah, so Mr. Simon is something that just happened accidentally about 3 years ago. I continued doing my personal development in New York. I did some landmark education courses, and through that, you make all these connections. And one of my friends said, you should check out someone I know in Jersey City that does music with children, where he goes to schools and he performs, music with children. I'm like, I'm a serious musician. I'm not going to do that, So he said, I rang him up and said, I'm just going to follow through on this. My friend set it up, and so I'll give him a call. So I gave this guy a call, and he said, come out and see what I do. have you got a guitar? And I said, yeah, I got a guitar. I just play it as a hobby, and write a couple of tunes here and there, but it's mainly a hobby thing. He said, well, just by talking to you, I can tell you're going to be really good with kids. I'm like, I've already got 2 nieces and a nephew who I adore and had so much fun, before I moved to New York, playing with them and helping raise them with my sister. And so I know I'm good with kids, but there was that, don't go there because your mum wants you to become a wiggle because there's a lot of money in it and I'm not doing this for the money. And it's not serious. It's like, it's a gag. I'm not going to be a clown. I'm not going to be up there going, yay.
Or like the dude in the rocket suit I was telling you about.
Like the dude in the rocket suit you were telling me about. Yeah, all that shit. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And so anyway, I went out with this guy and he was just a folk musician that sat there on the ground with these kids and played, Wheels on the Bus and some other really cool tunes and it was super easy and super fun, and I was shit scared. I was nervous as hell because kids
are scary, man.
Burn you, yeah.
Yeah, one of the scariest gigs I did was about 4 years ago at my daughter's preschool.
Right.
They asked me, because they found out I was a drummer, they asked me if I could come in and do a performance. And I tell you what, I hardly slept the night before.
Yep.
And I got there and, my daughter's standing right next to me and she's kind of like I could see, don't
come
muck
on,
this
Daddy,
up.
don't fuck this up.
These are all my homies,
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally.
And they don't clap. Bloody kids.
I know. I'm always going, yay, at the end of my things, and they'll do what I do. But if you just stop a song, they'll just be like, yeah. Don't cut that dead silence out.
No, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. So, it took me like 5 shadows with him. Like I would shadow him. We call it shadowing.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I would sit next to him and I'd kind of try and pick up the songs that he was doing. And, I shook some eggs and stood up and did the actions while he played the guitar and all this sort of stuff. And I actually really loved it. And I was like, okay, I can do this, And then it took like 5 times before he actually, about maybe 2 shadows before I got the courage to do my own song, or 2. Because he said to me, like, what did you grow up listening to? I was like, ABC and I don't know. I can't even think of some of those songs right now. Old MacDonald and The Wheels on the Bus, all that sort of stuff. And one song that came to mind was the Kookaburra song. He said, oh, that's really cool. We know that song over here. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I learned a couple of those songs and I played them and I was shit scared like you were. And then, but afterwards I was like, this is the bomb. This is like totally cool. I'm rocking this. I'm loving it. And it's super easy. I'm not a jazz guitarist. I know quite a few chords, but I don't, I don't solo or anything. I'm just a rhythm player.
Yep.
And this is perfect. And I ended up playing and doing a whole bunch of schools around New York and New Jersey for a number of years, and then I ended up, moving out of that and doing my own thing and concentrating back on my drumming career a lot more, and bands that really started taking over again, and so I wanted to sort of like make that more of a focus. But then during the day, I've got all this time during the day, so some mornings I go out and do Mr. Simon. So I got a bunch of schools in my area in Brooklyn and I go out and play for infant to 5-year-olds. So anything from
Fantastic.
like 6 months where they're just crawling and rolling around on the floor to pre kindergarten, pre-K.
It's great, man. Sounds like you're making a go of it.
Yeah.
You're trying to
the funny thing with that is and I only really woke up to it just recently, is that it's doing that stuff, I'm the rock star that I always wanted to be.
Oh, yeah,
all
true.
those years.
Yeah, true.
Because I walk into this room and they're like, Mr. Simon. Okay, no screaming, but they come and they hug you. They a hug around the leg is like the equivalent of, can I have your autograph? That's how I take that.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
And high fives around the class and I make them laugh because I'm silly and goofy, but I'm not a clown, but I'm just me, and I'm not trying to be anything else but that, and it brings it out. And if you saw me like playing last night, Craig was like, you were quite jovial last night, and you were smiling and having a great time. It's like, yeah, because it kind of cross-pollinates. You know, the children's music and my adult music, I call it, now kind of cross-pollinates. And so now I'm more goofy in my sci-fi shows and my rock bands.
Yep.
You know, and then I catch myself like rocking out like I was rocking out with Sting and Stuart Copeland or whatnot.
Yeah.
If I was playing in an adult band while I'm performing for 3-4-year-olds, you know, so I get to do all of that. So I'm very blessed.
It adds that little bit more to that elevation you were telling me about earlier.
Yeah.
Just that little bit something extra in there.
And I get to help these kids. You know, I come in and it's a lot of them say it's their favorite. You know, the parents say to me it's their favorite day or their favorite part of coming to school is Mr. Simon. So, and then I get some birthday parties from it, and I just, you know, go crazy at those things, and yeah,
great,
it's really cool. Yeah,
that's really cool.
And I'm writing music with that and doing a video, and and then it's funny because I was thinking that they were separate, like SiFi is over here and Mr. Simon is over here, but I got to remember that I'm playing for these kids, but their parents are my my demographic for SiFi. Yeah. So wait a minute, hang on a minute. This is, you know, we can make this work. They don't have to be separated. It's all the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I now consider myself as a drummer, but also a singer, guitarist and songwriter.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really cool. Mate, awesome to talk to you today. Good to get your story.
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening.
And I'm excited to follow SiFi now and see what happens. And really exciting. And again, thanks for talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for listening.
Cheers, Simon.
Thank you.
Cheers.